So in the last episode, we looked at how the destruction of Texas wetlands affects the species that depend on it. And today, we're going to be looking at the second question of the season, how the preservation of Texas wetlands will benefit Houston and the surrounding areas in general. I think Houston is a really interesting city to live in because it is big enough that whenever you travel throughout the city, you enter into these different bubbles and pockets of life and culture. Likewise, there are different bubbles of nature in the city as well. I call them pockets of peace. For example, the western side of Buffalo Bayou, the bayou that runs right around downtown, is a beautiful example of natural Texan environments integrated into the city. Memorial Park, another park that embraces Texas wildlife, has started to adapt and create these wildlife bridges across the roads that run through the park. Similarly, Herman Park and its neighbor, the Houston Zoo, are both really conscious about embracing and accepting natural Texan plants and wildlife into their environments. But these pockets of peace are only a fraction of the size and splendor that they used to be. The majority of Texas wetlands still sits underneath the concrete of Houston, Texas. Like I said before, wetlands occupy the environments between land and sea. And this is where their importance comes in. According to research by M. Shabende, in the past 20 years, the U.S. per capita consumption of fish and shellfish amounted to an average of 15.5 pounds per year, which might not sound like a lot, but 15.5 multiplied by the number of people in America equals a bunch of pounds of fish. Most of the fish that we eat as Americans rely on wetlands at some point throughout their life. And in the Gulf of Mexico alone, 90% of the fish harvested are wetland-dependent species. But wetlands are not only important because of the food sources they supply. Wetlands also play a huge role in reducing flood damage. Imagine you had two buckets with tiny cities. One with a slab of concrete underneath the city and one with a layer of soil. Now you pour water in both buckets. In the bucket with the concrete, the water has nowhere to go, so the city will flood. And in the bucket with the soil, the water will be absorbed into the soil. The city will still get wet, but the damage will be significantly less in the concrete city. And as you have probably guessed, bucket number 1 is Houston, and bucket number 2 is a theoretical city that preserves its wetlands. And for a city that is plagued by floods from May to October every single year, the flood protection provided by natural wetlands is very important. For anyone who has visited Galveston Beach, the beach closest to Houston, Texas, you will know that it is not known for its amazing water quality. It's not crystal clear, it's not Caribbean blue, and while the ocean and the open horizon are still beautiful and peaceful and nice to look at, sometimes the water can be so toxic that people are actually advised to stay away from it for their own protection. This is because the concrete-lined bayous and streets of Houston funnel all of our city's pollutants, chemicals, and other toxins straight into the Galveston Bay and the Gulf of Mexico. But like with flood control, wetlands can protect us by filtering out toxins in our city's runoff. And the final point of importance is that wetlands provide homes to an incredibly diverse range of species. At the end of my interview with Karen Sprague from episode 2, she shared with me a statistic from Duck Pond compared to the Texas wetland exhibit that now exists where Duck Pond used to be. The results are extraordinary.
Duck Lake, I was part of the animal roundup when they drained that thing.
Okay.
I am an invertebrate nerd. So when it was drained and we got all the turtles and the fish, I was digging through the muck like, what's in here? There was nothing in there.
Wow.
So I had a rough species count of maybe 12, and that's being generous. So 12 species that Duck Lake supports.
Wow.
Right now in Texas wetlands, we have over 200.
What?
So it's amazing what some plants and water clarity will do. Again, I am blown away by how many things have visited in our short 3 years. So it's, to me, if you need numbers for a success story, that you can't get any better than that. That's a huge increase in diversity.
Wow, that's incredible. So these 4 topics of importance: food for Americans, flood control, water quality management, and the home provision for species. What do they mean together? They mean that wetlands are kinda, sorta, super ridiculously important.